Welcome back to the Concrete House. Today we're going to take a look at how my wife and I built this modern bench from $60 worth of material. You will need the following lumber. We wanted the bench to be 5 feet long, so we started by marking them at 5 feet and cutting them on the miter saw. We will need to cut 7 of these. Once that was done, we used a 2x4 to measure the length we need to cut from a 1x4. Instead of measuring each cut, I like to use the first piece as a reference guide to cut the rest to the same length. We will need to cut 12 of these spacers. Next, we measured 8 inches from the ends of the 2x4s and marked a line. This is where the 1x4 spacers will line up. We then placed everything together to see what it was going to look like. Satisfied with the result, we moved ahead and tacked the 1x4s in place with a brad nailer. This isn't structural, but it keeps everything in place for drilling and installing screws. Now it's time to drill pilot holes to ensure the wood doesn't split from the screw. Make sure that you set the drill bit so that it's too shallow to reach all the way through the front surface of the bench. Here we are using 1.5" screws so they don't poke all the way through the front surface of the bench. Same procedure for the opposite side. You will notice that I'm placing the screws at diagonal positions. This is so that the next board can be attached using the opposite diagonal placement and not run into the previous layer's screw heads. Here we are using 3.5" screws, so they go through the first 1x4, the 2x4, and secure into the second 1x4. Make sure the screw heads are driven in just below the surface so they don't interfere with the fitment of the following board. Now that the bench top is done, it's time to cut some legs. We marked the 2x4 at 13 inches and started cutting. We will need 14 of these. Once all the legs were cut, we marked a line at 1¼ inch. This is a reference mark to line the pocket hole jig up with. The jig is secured in place at a mark with a clamp. To ensure the hole is drilled to the proper depth, secure the shaft collar 4 1/8 inches from the end of the wide part of the drill bit. Here you can see the screws have a perfect pocket hole to line them up to secure to the base. At this point, it's easier to sand the legs than when they are installed. Now it's time to install the legs. Make sure the pocket holes are facing away from the front side of the bench. Line the leg up with the end of the bench and secure with screws. Here I'm using a leftover scrap of 1x4 to ensure proper spacing of the next leg. process until all legs are attached. Now we need to cut 2 baseboards from the 2x4 at 15 inches. Make sure to drill pilot holes, as screwing into the end grain is the easiest way to cause a split. Again, I'm using a 1x4 to ensure proper spacing of each leg as I screw them in place. Same procedure applies to the other side. With the second baseboard installed, the construction is done and it's time to move on to sanding. I'm starting with a coarse sandpaper to level the surface and spacers to the same plane. Pay close attention at the joints and sand them to an even level. Once the rough sanding was done, I moved to a 220 grit orbital sander to give it a smooth finish. To finish it off, we're using a clear lacquer. It doesn't change the color of the wood, but really brings out the pattern of the grain and gives it a really nice smooth finish. Here's the final result. The bench measures 5 feet long, 15 inches deep, and 18 inches tall. We are really happy with how it turned out and think it looks great in our living room area. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next project.